The Buddha taught that the thing you refuse to lose is often the very thing that keeps you suffering. That sounds backwards, because we are taught to hold tighter when something matters. Hold on to the relationship, hold on to the memory, hold on to the person you used to be, hold on to the life you thought you were supposed to have. But Buddhism says the tighter your grip becomes, the more pain you create. What if the reason your life still feels stuck is not because you lost too much, but because you are still trying to carry something that has already ended? These 7 lessons will show you how to release it without losing yourself. 1. Let people leave without chasing their explanation. Sometimes the hardest thing to let go of is not the person, but the questions they left behind. You keep wondering why they changed, why they stopped caring, why they treated you differently, or why they hurt you after everything you gave them. Your mind starts searching for answers because it believes that if you understand exactly what happened, you will finally feel at peace. But sometimes no explanation will ever feel good enough, and waiting for one only keeps you emotionally connected to the person who already walked away. Buddhism teaches non-attachment, which means learning to accept what you cannot control. You cannot force someone to understand your heart, regret losing you, apologize sincerely, or recognize your value. Sometimes their actions already tell you everything you need to know. If someone repeatedly disrespected you, ignored your feelings, disappeared when you needed them, or made you feel like you were never enough, their behavior is already an answer. Do not spend months or years looking for a beautiful explanation for behavior that kept causing you pain. Some people leave because they change, some because they were never meant to stay, and some because the connection has simply reached its end. You do not need to hate them, argue with them, or prove that you were right. You can simply accept what happened and choose your peace. Sometimes real closure begins when you stop asking, "Why did they do this to me?" and start saying, "I have seen enough to know that I deserve to move forward." 2. Do not carry an old version of yourself into a new life. Sometimes the person you need to forgive and let go of is the old version of yourself. Maybe you trusted someone who did not deserve your trust, stayed in a painful situation for too long, ignored your own feelings, or kept giving chances to people who continued hurting you. When you look back, you may ask yourself, "Why did I allow that?" Or, "Why didn't I leave sooner?" But constantly judging your past choices only creates another kind of suffering. Buddhism teaches compassion, and that compassion should also be given to yourself. The person you were back then did not have the wisdom you have today. You learned because you experienced the pain, made mistakes, and survived difficult moments. Maybe trusting the wrong person taught you to recognize character. Maybe staying too long taught you the importance of boundaries. Instead of being ashamed of your past, use it as a lesson. You are allowed to change, become wiser, raise your standards, and stop being the person who accepts what once hurt you. 3. Stop feeding what you are trying to forget. You cannot fully let go of something if you keep giving it your attention every day. Many people say they want to move on, but they continue checking the other person's social media, reading old messages, looking at old photos, replaying conversations, and wondering what that person is doing now. Every time you do this, you bring the past back into the present. You may think you are only looking for a few minutes, but emotionally, you are keeping the connection alive. Buddhism teaches us that whatever we continue to focus on becomes stronger in the mind. If you keep feeding anger, anger grows. If you keep feeding regret, regret becomes heavier. If you keep feeding attachment, it becomes harder to let go. This is why healing is not only about saying, "I want to move on." Healing also requires changing the habits that keep pulling you backward. Sometimes that means deleting old conversations, removing certain reminders, stopping yourself from checking what someone is doing, and creating distance from anything that keeps reopening the same wound. This does not mean you have to pretend that you never cared. It does not mean you have to erase every memory or force yourself to stop feeling. You are allowed to miss someone, you are allowed to feel sadness, you are allowed to remember good moments. The important thing is that you do not allow those feelings to control your actions. A memory can enter your mind without becoming a reason to return. A feeling can appear without becoming a command that you must follow. Mindfulness teaches you to observe your thoughts instead of immediately reacting to them. When you suddenly feel the urge to check on someone, stop for a moment and notice what is happening inside you. Maybe you feel lonely. Maybe you miss the attention they once gave you. Maybe you are hoping to see something that proves they still care. Instead of acting on that feeling, simply recognize it and allow it to pass. The more you practice this, the more control you regain over your own mind. At first, letting go may feel uncomfortable because your mind is used to returning to the same person, memory, or situation. But every time you choose not to reopen the past, you become a little stronger. Slowly, the thoughts become less frequent, the emotions become less intense, and the memories lose their power over you. You begin to understand that moving forward does not happen in one big moment. It happens through many small decisions where you choose your peace instead of your attachment. 4. Stop waiting to feel ready before you start again. Many people believe they must feel completely healed before they can begin living again. They tell themselves, "I will start when I feel better. I will try again when I feel confident. I will move forward when I stop thinking about the past." But healing does not always happen before you begin. Very often, healing happens because you begin. You take small steps while you are still uncertain. You create new routines while old memories are still present, and you slowly discover that life can move forward even when your heart is not completely ready. Buddhism teaches us to return to the present moment because the present is the only place where change can happen. The past exists in memory, and the future exists in imagination, but your actions can only happen now. If you spend every day waiting for the perfect emotional state, you may remain stuck for much longer than necessary. You do not need to wake up feeling fearless before you take the next step. You only need enough courage to do one small thing that helps your life move in a better direction. Maybe that small step is getting out of bed earlier, cleaning your room, taking a walk, exercising, reading a few pages, starting work you have been avoiding, or spending time with someone who brings calm into your life. These actions may look simple, but they begin to change the way you see yourself. Every time you keep a small promise to yourself, you rebuild trust in your own ability to move forward. Slowly, you stop seeing yourself as someone who is trapped by the past and begin seeing yourself as someone who is creating a new life. Sometimes people wait for motivation, but motivation is not always the beginning. Action often comes first. You may not feel like exercising until you start moving. You may not feel inspired to work until you sit down and begin. You may not feel hopeful about your future until you start creating something worth looking forward to. This is why small disciplined actions are so powerful. They do not require you to feel perfect. They simply require you to begin. Buddhism also reminds us that emotions are temporary. Sadness changes, fear changes, loneliness changes, and even the strongest pain does not remain exactly the same forever. If you wait for every uncomfortable emotion to disappear before you live your life, you give those emotions too much control. Instead, learn to carry them gently while continuing to move. You can feel sad and still take care of yourself. You can feel afraid and still make a good decision. You can miss someone and still choose not to return to what hurt you. There may be days when you feel strong and days when you feel like you have made no progress at all. Do not judge your healing by one difficult day. Growth is rarely a straight line. Some mornings will feel lighter, and some memories will suddenly feel heavy again. What matters is that you continue choosing the direction you want your life to go. Even when your emotions move backward for a moment, your actions can still move forward. You also do not need to rebuild your entire life at once. Trying to change everything in one day can make you feel overwhelmed and disappointed. Choose one area first. Improve your sleep, your health, your work, your environment, or the people you spend time with. Small improvements create momentum. When your days become more organized and meaningful, your mind has less space to live constantly inside old pain. One of the most beautiful parts of healing is that you often do not notice it while it is happening. You simply continue living, and then one day you realize that you went several hours without thinking about the person who once occupied your mind. Later, you notice that you can remember what happened without feeling the same pain. Eventually, you understand that you did not wait until you were completely healed to start living. You healed because you finally started living again. So do not wait for a perfect moment. Do not wait for complete confidence, complete closure, or complete peace. Start where you are, with the strength you have today. Take one useful step, then another. Your new life does not begin when every painful feeling disappears. It begins the moment you decide that those feelings will no longer stop you from moving forward. 5. Do not build your future around proving something to your past. Sometimes people believe they have moved on, but deep inside, they are still building their life around the people who hurt them. They want to become successful so someone will regret leaving them. They want to look better so an old partner will feel jealous. They want more money, more attention, or more achievements because they imagine the day when the people who doubted them finally realize they were wrong. This kind of motivation can feel powerful in the beginning, but Buddhism teaches us to look deeper. If your entire future is still being shaped by someone from your past, then part of you is still attached to them. There is nothing wrong with wanting to improve yourself after a painful experience. Pain can wake you up. Rejection can make you stronger. Losing someone can push you to discover parts of yourself that you ignored for years. But your growth should eventually become about you. If you are still imagining their reaction every time you succeed, then they are still living inside your mind. They may no longer be part of your daily life, but their opinion is still influencing your decisions. Buddhism teaches that attachment can take many forms. We usually think attachment means wanting someone back, but attachment can also mean wanting them to regret losing you. It can mean wanting revenge, wanting recognition, or wanting to prove that you were good enough all along. Even anger can become a form of attachment when it keeps another person at the center of your thoughts. You may tell yourself that you are moving forward, while emotionally you are still turning around to see whether they are watching. Real healing begins when your success no longer needs an audience from your past. You start taking care of your body because you respect yourself, not because you want someone to notice your transformation. You work harder because you want a better future, not because you want to make someone feel small. You become calmer because peace feels better than chaos, not because you want to show someone that you are doing fine without them. Ask yourself a simple question. If the person who hurt you could never see your progress, would you still want this life? If the answer is yes, then your growth is becoming truly yours. But if everything suddenly feels less meaningful when you imagine that they will never know about it, you may still be building for their approval. That is not freedom. Freedom is when your life feels valuable, even if nobody from your past ever sees what you become. This also means releasing the fantasy that one day they will return and finally understand your worth. Many people quietly build their future around that moment. They imagine becoming stronger, happier, richer, or more successful, and then seeing the person who left come back with regret. But even if that happened, it would not give you the peace you think it would. The deeper peace comes when their return is no longer something you need. Buddhism reminds us that everything changes, including people, relationships, and our own desires. The version of you who desperately wanted their approval does not have to remain the person you are today. You are allowed to outgrow the need to be understood by someone who did not understand you when it mattered. You are allowed to stop proving yourself to people who have already chosen their own path. There is also a hidden danger in using pain as your only source of motivation. At first, anger can give you energy. You may work harder because someone rejected you. You may become more disciplined because you want to prove them wrong. But anger is exhausting when you carry it for too long. Eventually, you need a healthier reason to continue. You need purpose, self-respect, curiosity, peace, and love for the life you are building. Think about the difference between two people climbing the same mountain. One is climbing because they love the view, the challenge, and the person they are becoming. The other is climbing only because they want someone at the bottom to feel jealous. Both may reach the top, but only one will truly enjoy being there. Your life works the same way. Success means very little if you are still emotionally chained to the people you are trying to impress. So build something that belongs to you. Create a peaceful home, a healthier body, meaningful work, stronger habits, and relationships that feel honest. Learn things because they interest you. Travel because you want to experience life. Become disciplined because you respect your time. Protect your peace because you finally understand how expensive chaos can be. One day, you may notice something surprising. You will achieve something that once would have made you think, "I hope they see this," and instead, you will simply enjoy it. You will no longer imagine their reaction. You will no longer need their regret. You will no longer wonder whether they finally understand what they lost. That quiet moment is a powerful sign of healing. The greatest victory is not making someone regret hurting you. The greatest victory is reaching a point where their regret no longer matters. When you stop building your future as a message to your past, your life finally becomes your own. 6. Create a life so peaceful that you stop wanting the old one back. Letting go becomes much easier when you finally have something better to move toward. Many people spend so much time trying to forget the past that they never begin building a new life. They wake up thinking about what happened, spend the day remembering what they lost, and go to sleep wondering how things could have been different. Their attention stays behind them, so even though time keeps moving, emotionally they remain in the same place. Buddhism teaches that freedom does not come only from releasing what is gone. It also comes from learning how to create a life that no longer depends on what you lost. You may think that moving forward means completely forgetting a person, a relationship, or a painful chapter, but that is not always possible, and it is not necessary. You do not need to erase the past in order to become free from it. You simply need to build enough peace in the present that the past stops feeling like the only place where happiness existed. When your current life begins to feel meaningful, calm, and full of purpose, you naturally stop looking backward so often. Think about why people return to situations that already hurt them. Sometimes, it is not because the old situation was truly good. It is because the present feels empty. When you have no new routine, no meaningful direction, no healthy relationships, and nothing exciting to build, your mind naturally returns to what is familiar. Even pain can feel comforting when it is familiar. You may know that a relationship was unhealthy, but loneliness makes you remember only the good moments. You may know that a certain environment made you unhappy, but fear of the unknown makes the past look safer than it really was. This is why building a better life is such an important part of letting go. You cannot only remove something from your life, you must also create something new in the space it leaves behind. If you stop talking to someone who consumed most of your time, you now have empty hours. If you leave a painful relationship, you now have emotional space that once belonged to another person. If you walk away from a toxic group, you may suddenly have quiet evenings where there used to be constant noise. What you do with that empty space matters. Buddhism teaches us not to fear emptiness. An empty space is not always a sign that something is missing. Sometimes it is the beginning of something new. A cup must have empty space before it can hold fresh water. In the same way, your life sometimes needs space before something healthier can enter. The silence after walking away may feel strange at first, but that silence can become peace if you learn how to use it wisely. Instead of immediately trying to fill every empty space with another person, begin filling your life with yourself. Learn who you are when nobody is demanding your attention. Notice what you enjoy when you are not trying to impress anyone. Ask yourself, what kind of morning makes you feel calm? What kind of work gives you a sense of progress? What kind of people make you feel safe? And what kind of habits leave you feeling proud at the end of the day? You may discover that a better life is much simpler than you once believed. Perhaps you do not need constant excitement. Maybe you need peaceful mornings, meaningful work, enough sleep, a healthy body, a few honest friendships, and time to think clearly. The world often teaches us to chase a life that looks impressive from the outside, but Buddhism encourages us to pay attention to the condition of our inner world. A life can look successful and still feel miserable. Another life can look simple and still feel deeply rich. Start by protecting your mornings. The first part of your day can shape the state of your mind for everything that follows. If the first thing you do every morning is check who messaged you, look at someone else's life, or return mentally to your old problems, you begin the day giving your attention away. Instead, create a morning that belongs to you. Sit quietly for a few minutes, stretch your body, drink water, go outside if you can, read something that strengthens your mind, think about what you want to accomplish that day. These small habits may seem ordinary, but peace is often built from ordinary things, repeated consistently. A peaceful life is not created by one dramatic decision. It is created through dozens of small choices that tell your mind, I am taking care of my life now. Every time you choose a calm morning over unnecessary chaos, you strengthen a new version of yourself. Then look at the people around you. Not everyone deserves the same level of access to your energy. One of the reasons people struggle to heal is because they remove one painful person while continuing to surround themselves with others who create the same emotional environment. Different face, same confusion. Different relationship, same disrespect. If you want a peaceful life, you must become more careful about who you allow close to you. Buddhism teaches compassion, but compassion does not mean giving everyone unlimited access to your life. You can wish someone well from a distance. You can understand someone's pain without allowing them to repeatedly create pain in you. You can forgive without inviting the same behavior back into your daily life. Boundaries are not hatred. Sometimes boundaries are simply wisdom created by experience. Notice how you feel after spending time with certain people. Some people leave you feeling calm, understood, and respected. Others leave you questioning yourself, emotionally exhausted, or worried about what you said. Pay attention to that difference. Peace becomes much easier when your relationships do not require constant emotional recovery. This does not mean you should expect every relationship to be perfect. People will misunderstand each other sometimes. Friends will disagree. Families can have difficult moments. But there is a difference between occasional conflict and a pattern that constantly destroys your peace. Wisdom means learning to recognize that difference. You should also build a life that you enjoy when you are alone. Many people stay attached to unhealthy relationships because they are afraid of solitude. They believe being alone means they have failed or that nobody wants them. But Buddhism has always valued periods of solitude because silence gives you the opportunity to see yourself clearly. When you are constantly surrounded by noise, opinions, messages, and other people's expectations, it becomes difficult to hear your own mind. Learn to sit with yourself without immediately reaching for distraction. Take a walk alone. Eat a meal without needing someone beside you. Spend an evening reading, writing, listening to something meaningful, or simply resting. At first, solitude may feel uncomfortable because your mind will bring old memories to the surface. But over time, you begin to realize that being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. Loneliness says, something is missing because nobody is here. Solitude says, I can still be complete while I am here by myself. When you learn this, your relationships change because you stop choosing people only to escape loneliness. You begin choosing them because their presence genuinely adds something healthy to your life. Take care of your physical environment too. Your surroundings quietly affect your state of mind. A room filled with reminders of painful memories can keep pulling you backward. A messy environment can make an already overwhelmed mind feel heavier. You do not need an expensive home or perfect surroundings. You simply need a space that supports the person you are trying to become. Clean what you can. Remove things that constantly reopen old wounds. Rearrange your room. Let in fresh air. Create a small place where you can sit peacefully. Sometimes changing your physical space tells your mind that a new chapter has begun. What seems like a simple act of cleaning can become a symbol of releasing what no longer belongs in your life. Your body also deserves attention. Emotional healing becomes harder when you constantly neglect your physical health. Sleep matters. Movement matters. Food matters. Rest matters. You do not need to transform yourself overnight, and you do not need to chase perfection. Simply begin treating your body like something you want to protect, rather than something you punish because you are unhappy. Go for a walk when your thoughts feel heavy. Exercise because movement can help release tension your mind has been carrying. Sleep instead of staying awake replaying conversations that cannot be changed. Eat in a way that gives you energy. These are not small things, they are daily messages to yourself that your life deserves care. Another important part of building a better life is finding something meaningful to work toward. Without direction, the mind often returns to old pain because it has nowhere else to place its energy. Purpose does not need to mean some enormous mission that changes the world. Your purpose can begin with improving one area of your life. Maybe you want to become better at your work. Maybe you want to learn a skill. Maybe you want to start a business, improve your education, become healthier, create something, help your family, or become financially independent. Give yourself something that requires your attention and growth. When your mind has a meaningful future to build, the past slowly loses its position at the center of your life. There is something powerful about becoming interested in your own future again. For a long time after pain, you may stop imagining good things ahead. Everything becomes about what ended. But slowly, as you begin making plans, creating goals, and improving your life, curiosity returns. You start wondering what you could become, instead of constantly wondering why someone left. That change is important. You stop asking, why did this happen to me, and begin asking, what can I build from here? One question keeps you trapped in the past, while the other gives you a direction. Buddhism teaches that change is unavoidable. Everything is constantly becoming something else. Seasons change, bodies change, relationships change, emotions change, and even your identity changes. Instead of fighting this truth, use it. If everything can change, then your life can change too. The way you feel today is not the way you will feel forever. You may currently believe that you will always miss what you lost. But think about other things you once believed you could never live without. Some of them hardly cross your mind anymore. This is one of the quiet truths of life. The mind adapts. What feels enormous today can become small with enough time, wisdom, and new experience. But do not depend only on time. Time passes whether you change or not. Use time intentionally. Fill your days with things that help you grow. Learn, work, move your body, spend time in nature, practice silence, have conversations with people who inspire you, reduce unnecessary drama, create something that did not exist before. The more life you add to your present, the less control the past has over your attention. Learn to enjoy ordinary days as well. Many people believe a better life must be exciting all the time. They chase constant stimulation because quiet moments feel empty. But peace often looks very ordinary. It is drinking something warm in the morning without anxiety. It is doing your work without someone constantly creating problems. It is eating dinner without an argument waiting to happen. It is sleeping at night without wondering whether someone will hurt you tomorrow. Do not underestimate the value of a calm life simply because it does not look dramatic. Chaos can become addictive when you have lived around it for a long time. When peace finally arrives, it may initially feel boring because your nervous system is used to emotional highs and lows. Give yourself time to become familiar with calmness. You do not need to create problems just because peace feels unfamiliar. You do not need to return to someone simply because the silence feels strange. Sometimes boredom is simply peace before you learn how to enjoy it. A better life also means becoming selective about what you allow into your mind. Your mental environment matters just as much as your physical environment. If you spend hours consuming negativity, comparing yourself to strangers, or watching things that constantly make you feel inadequate, you make inner peace much harder. Pay attention to what you consume. Choose information that teaches you something. Listen to things that make you think clearly. Reduce the amount of time you spend watching other people's lives and spend more time building your own. Comparison can make a peaceful life feel insufficient because someone else's life always appears more exciting from the outside. Buddhism reminds us that craving creates suffering. The mind constantly says, "I need more. I need what they have. I need this person. I need everyone to approve of me. I need my life to look different before I can be happy." But the more you obey every craving, the more reasons your mind finds to remain dissatisfied. Contentment does not mean giving up on growth. You can want to improve your life while still appreciating the life you already have. You can work towards something better without treating today like it is worthless. This balance creates a powerful kind of peace. Wake up and notice what is already good. Maybe your life is not perfect, but perhaps you have a place to sleep, food to eat, a body that can move, someone who cares about you, or another day in which you can make a different choice. Gratitude brings your attention back to what still exists, instead of only what disappeared. This is especially important after loss. Pain makes the mind focus on one missing thing until everything else becomes invisible. You lose one person and suddenly feel like you have nothing. You lose one opportunity and begin thinking your entire future is ruined. But life is always larger than one loss. There are still experiences you have not had, people you have not met, places you have not seen, skills you have not learned, conversations you have not had, and versions of yourself you have not yet become. Do not allow one closed door to convince you that the entire building is empty. Building a peaceful life also requires patience. There will be days when you feel like you are finally moving forward, and then suddenly a memory returns and makes you feel as if you are back at the beginning. You are not. Healing is not measured by whether difficult emotions ever return. It is measured by how you respond when they do. Maybe months ago, one memory could ruin your entire week. Now it affects you for an hour. That is progress. Maybe you still miss someone, but you no longer contact them. That is progress. Maybe you still remember the pain, but you no longer blame yourself every day. That is progress. Do not demand instant transformation from yourself. A tree does not become strong the day it is planted. It grows slowly, almost invisibly, through repeated nourishment. Your new life develops in the same way. One healthy boundary may not seem important today, but repeated boundaries change your relationships. One morning routine may not seem powerful, but repeated mornings change your mind. 1 hour of meaningful work may seem small, but repeated hours change your future. Eventually, These small decisions begin creating a life that feels completely different from the one you thought you could never leave. And then something beautiful happens. You stop thinking about going back. Not because you hate the past, not because you are pretending nothing good ever happened there. You simply realize that the person you are becoming no longer fits inside the life you once accepted. You may remember someone fondly and still know you cannot return. You may appreciate what a relationship taught you while understanding that it has finished its purpose. You may even forgive people who hurt you without giving them another opportunity to do it again. This is maturity. You no longer confuse forgiveness with returning, love with attachment, or memories with destiny. Buddhist wisdom teaches us to allow things to arise and pass away without desperately trying to hold them forever. A beautiful moment does not become meaningless because it ended. A relationship does not need to last forever to have taught you something. A chapter can be important without becoming the entire book. Allow the past to become one part of your story rather than the place where your story stopped. Your life does not need to remain organized around what hurt you. You can reorganize it around what heals you. You can choose peace over constant explanation, discipline over distraction, healthy distance over familiar pain, and meaningful work over endless remembering. Create a life where your mornings feel like yours again. Create relationships where you do not have to constantly question whether you matter. Create routines that make you stronger instead of keeping you emotionally exhausted. Create goals that make you curious about who you could become. And most importantly, become someone whose happiness is not completely dependent on another person's presence. When your peace depends on someone staying, you will always fear losing them. When your sense of worth depends on someone's approval, you will always fear disappointing them. But when you build stability inside yourself, relationships become something you appreciate instead of something you desperately need in order to feel complete. This does not mean becoming emotionally distant or refusing to love. Buddhism does not ask you to stop caring. It asks you to love without turning another person into the owner of your peace. Love people, but keep your center. Care deeply, but remember yourself. Give generously, but know when giving becomes self-abandonment. Forgive, but learn from what happened. A peaceful life is not a life where nothing difficult ever happens. Problems will still come. People will disappoint you. Plans will change. Loss will still be part of being human. The difference is that your entire inner world will no longer collapse every time something changes. You begin developing a quiet stability inside yourself. You understand that difficult moments can visit your life without becoming your entire life. You stop believing every painful emotion is permanent. You learn that you can lose something important and still remain capable of rebuilding. Eventually, the life you create begins teaching you something the past never could. Peace is not found by getting everything back. Sometimes peace comes from realizing you no longer need it back. You stop wishing for the old relationship. You stop wishing for the old version of yourself. You stop wishing that life could return to how it used to be. Instead, you become grateful that you kept walking long enough to discover something different. Perhaps the greatest sign that you have truly moved forward is not that you never think about the past again. It is that when you think about it, you no longer want to live there. You can remember it without reaching for it. You can appreciate parts of it without wanting the whole experience back. You can acknowledge what it gave you and still recognize what it cost you. Then your attention naturally returns to the life in front of you. That is what you should build, a life so meaningful that you become interested in tomorrow again. A life so peaceful that chaos no longer feels like love. A life so full of self-respect that you no longer beg people to stay. And a life so grounded that losing one person does not make you lose yourself. Do not spend the rest of your life trying to recreate what already ended. Build something new, build something calmer, build something wiser. Build a life that reflects everything the past taught you, without continuing to carry everything the past did to you. When you begin doing that, letting go stops feeling like losing everything. It begins feeling like making room for everything that could still become possible. 7. Stop asking the past to give you a different ending. One of the hardest things to accept in life is that some things are already finished. A relationship ended, a person changed, an opportunity disappeared, a mistake was made. Words were spoken that cannot be taken back. Time passed, and no matter how many times you think about it, the past will not return and give you a different result. Yet the mind often keeps going back because it believes that if it thinks long enough, regrets hard enough, or understands everything perfectly, somehow the pain will change. Buddhism teaches that this struggle with what has already happened creates unnecessary suffering. There is a difference between learning from the past and living inside it. Learning means you look back, understand what happened, take the lesson, and use that wisdom to make better choices. Living inside the past means you keep replaying the same memories without creating anything new from them. You keep asking why someone did what they did, why you stayed so long, why you did not speak up, or why life did not go the way you expected. These questions can feel important, but when you ask them every day without receiving any new answer, they become another form of attachment. Buddhism teaches acceptance, but acceptance is often misunderstood. Acceptance does not mean saying that what happened was good. It does not mean pretending that betrayal did not hurt, that loss did not matter, or that another person's behavior was acceptable. Acceptance means recognizing that this moment has already become part of reality. You may not like it, but continuing to fight it inside your mind will not change it. When you stop arguing with reality, you begin saving the energy that was being wasted on something you cannot control. Think about how often the mind says, "This should not have happened." Maybe it should not have happened, but it did. The question now is not whether the past was fair. The question is what you are going to do with the life that remains in front of you. You can spend another year proving to yourself that something should have been different, or you can accept that it was not different and begin deciding what happens next. This is where real strength begins. Strength is not always about fixing what went wrong. Sometimes strength is accepting that something cannot be fixed and refusing to let it destroy everything that can still be built. You may never receive the apology you deserved. You may never understand why someone treated you the way they did. You may never recover the exact opportunity that disappeared. But your life can still become meaningful without those things. The mind loves unfinished stories. When something ends without the explanation you wanted, your thoughts naturally return to it. You imagine different conversations. You think about what you should have said. You imagine the moment when someone finally understands your side. You may even create a perfect ending in your head, where everything is explained and everyone recognizes what they did wrong. But this imaginary ending can become dangerous because it keeps your emotional life connected to something that no longer exists. Sometimes there is no satisfying ending. There is only the decision to stop waiting for one. Buddhism encourages us to observe reality as it is, not only as we wanted it to be. This is difficult because desire creates expectations. You wanted someone to stay, so their leaving feels like something went terribly wrong. You wanted a plan to succeed, so failure feels like life betrayed you. You wanted a certain future, so when it disappeared, you felt as if your entire path had been taken away. But Buddhism reminds us that everything changes, people change, feelings change, circumstances change, and plans change. Impermanence is not an exception to life. It is one of the basic conditions of life. The more you demand that people, relationships, and situations remain exactly as you want them, the more suffering you create when change eventually arrives. This does not mean you should never love deeply or care about the future. It means you learn to care without believing that anything is guaranteed to remain exactly the same forever. When you understand this, Endings become painful but not impossible to survive. You can grieve without believing your life is over. Maybe someone was important to you for years, and now they are no longer part of your life. The mind may immediately say, all that time was wasted, but not everything that ends was meaningless. A relationship can end and still have taught you important things about yourself. A friendship can disappear and still contain memories worth appreciating. A chapter of your life can close without making the entire chapter a mistake. Sometimes we create even more pain by trying to turn every ending into proof that nothing mattered. But something can matter deeply and still end. A beautiful sunset does not become worthless because it lasts only a short time. In the same way, some experiences are valuable because of what they gave you during the time they existed, even if they were never meant to remain forever. The problem begins when you refuse to let the chapter close. You keep going back to the same page, reading the same lines, hoping the story will somehow change. But your life has many pages left. Every hour spent trying to rewrite an old chapter is an hour you are not using to write the next one. There may also be mistakes from your own past that you struggle to accept. Perhaps you made a decision that hurt someone. Maybe you wasted years in the wrong situation. Maybe you ignored an opportunity, trusted the wrong person, or behaved in a way you now regret. Looking back with today's understanding can make the old version of yourself seem foolish. But remember that the person you were then did not have everything you know now. If you had known then what you know today, you probably would have chosen differently. But that is exactly how wisdom is created. You learn because you experience consequences. You become wiser because something teaches you. Punishing yourself forever does not make you more responsible. Responsibility means acknowledging the mistake, making amends where possible, changing your behavior, and refusing to repeat the same pattern. Endless self-hatred is not growth. It is another form of attachment to the past. Buddhist compassion should include yourself. This does not mean avoiding responsibility. It means understanding that you are also a changing human being. You are allowed to become better than the person who made the mistake. You are allowed to outgrow an old version of yourself. If you spend every day saying, "I ruined everything," you may eventually begin living as if your future is already ruined too. Be careful with this. A bad decision can affect your life, but it does not have to become your identity. You made a mistake. You are not required to become the mistake. Use regret correctly. Regret should teach, not imprison. If regret tells you to become more honest, listen to it. If regret tells you to choose better people, listen to it. If regret tells you to protect your time, respect yourself, or stop ignoring important signs, listen to it. But when regret says, you deserve to suffer forever because of what happened, that is no longer wisdom. The past should become a teacher, not a judge that follows you into every new day. Another reason people struggle to release the past is because they secretly believe that moving on means what happened did not matter. They think, if I stop thinking about this person, maybe that means I never loved them. Or, if I become happy again, maybe that means the loss was not important. But healing does not erase meaning. You can love someone and still continue without them. You can miss a person and still build another life. You can honor what was lost without making sadness your permanent home. Grief and healing can exist together. Some memories may always bring emotion. That is normal. The goal is not to become a person who feels nothing. The goal is to reach a place where the memory does not control your entire day. There will be moments when something reminds you of the past unexpectedly. A song, a place, a smell, an old photograph, or a certain date may bring everything back for a moment. Do not panic when this happens. Do not immediately think, I thought I was healed. Why am I feeling this again? Healing does not mean memories disappear. It means your relationship with those memories changes. In the beginning, a memory may feel like a storm. Later, it becomes a wave. Eventually, it may become something you simply notice and allow to pass. The memory remains, but you become stronger around it. This is where mindfulness becomes powerful. Instead of fighting every painful thought, observe it. When the past appears in your mind, say, "This is a memory. It is not happening again right now." Notice the emotion without turning it into another story. Your mind might say, "They left me, so I will always be alone." That is not a memory anymore. That is your mind creating a future from old pain. Your mind might say, "I failed once, so I will probably fail again." Again, that is not reality. It is fear using the past as evidence. Separate what happened from what you are predicting. Something ended before. That does not mean everything will end the same way. Someone betrayed you. That does not mean everyone is untrustworthy. You made one poor decision. That does not mean you cannot make a better one now. One of the dangers of holding on to the past is that you start protecting yourself from things that have not happened yet. You become suspicious of new people because an old person hurt you. You reject opportunities because something failed before. You close your heart because you are afraid of repeating an old experience. In this way, the past continues controlling your future, even though the event itself is over. Buddhism teaches awareness because awareness helps you see when an old wound is making a new decision for you. Before saying no to something new, ask yourself whether the current situation is truly dangerous or whether an old memory is making you afraid. Before pushing someone away, ask whether they have actually done something wrong or whether you are expecting them to behave like someone from your past. Wisdom means learning from what happened without forcing every new experience to become a copy of the old one. You should also stop trying to receive justice from people who may never give it to you. Sometimes you want someone to admit they were wrong because you believe that their admission will finally bring peace. You want them to understand how deeply they hurt you. You want them to apologize with the exact words you have imagined. Maybe they will, maybe they will not. If your peace depends on another person's ability to understand their behavior, you are giving them too much control over your healing. Some people will never take responsibility. Some will rewrite the story to protect their own ego. Some will know they hurt you and still choose silence. You cannot spend your life standing in front of a closed door, waiting for someone to come out and explain themselves. At some point, you must decide that your understanding is enough. You know how the experience made you feel. You know what happened repeatedly. You know what you can no longer accept. That knowledge is enough to help you move differently in the future. Closure can be something you give yourself. It can sound like this: I may never understand everything that happened, but I understand enough to know that I cannot keep living here. That is a powerful form of acceptance. You may also need to accept that some dreams belong to an old version of your life. Perhaps you imagined marrying a certain person, living in a certain place, following a certain career, or reaching a goal by a certain age. When that picture collapses, you may feel lost because you were attached not only to what existed, but also to what you believed would exist. Sometimes the grief is for a future that never happened. This can be especially difficult because there are no memories to release. There is only an imagined life that you had emotionally invested in. But Buddhism reminds us that attachment to expectations can create suffering just as strongly as attachment to memories. You thought life would look one way. It did not. That does not mean it cannot still become beautiful in another way. The road you planned is not the only road that can lead somewhere meaningful. Sometimes, a closed path forces you to discover parts of yourself you would never have met otherwise. The relationship ends, and you learn independence. The job disappears, and you discover another skill. The plan fails, and you build something you never would have considered before. You may not appreciate this immediately. Padol's pain rarely feels like opportunity while you are inside it. But with time, you may look back and realize that an ending changed the direction of your life in ways you could not have predicted. This is why it is important not to declare the entire future ruined simply because the old future disappeared. You do not know what is still possible. There are people you have not met yet. There are experiences you have not had yet. There are abilities inside you that difficult circumstances may force you to discover. There are peaceful days ahead that you cannot currently imagine because your mind is still looking backward. Do not let yesterday convince you that tomorrow has nothing left to offer. Another lesson Buddhism teaches is that clinging does not keep something alive. It only keeps your suffering alive. Holding on to old messages does not bring the person back. Replaying a mistake does not undo it. Imagining a different ending does not create one. What holding on does is continue occupying your attention. And attention is one of your most valuable resources. Whatever has your attention repeatedly begins shaping your life. If your attention lives mainly in regret, your present becomes smaller. If your attention lives mainly in resentment, your mind becomes heavy. If your attention lives mainly in what someone else did, your own future receives less energy. You need that energy back. You need it for your health, your goals, your relationships, your peace, and the person you are becoming. This is why letting go is not simply emotional. It is practical. You are reclaiming time. You are reclaiming attention. You are reclaiming the mental space that has been occupied by something you can no longer change. Ask yourself, how much of your day belongs to something that is already over? Maybe you spend 30 minutes checking someone's page. Maybe you lose hours replaying a conversation. Maybe every new relationship is compared to the old one. Maybe every quiet moment becomes an opportunity for regret. Now imagine what would happen if even half of that energy returned to you. What could you learn? What could you build? What could you improve? How much calmer could your mind become? The purpose of letting go is not to become careless about the past. It is to become responsible for the present. The present is where your life is happening, not in the conversation you wish had gone differently, not in the day someone left, not in the decision you regret. Those things exist now only as memories. Your body is here. Your breath is here. Your choices are here. Buddhist practice repeatedly returns to the present because suffering often increases when the mind travels endlessly between regret about the past and fear about the future. Return to what is actually in front of you. What needs your attention today? What can you improve today? Who deserves your care today? What choice could make your life slightly better today? These questions are more useful than asking the past to become something it cannot become. You may still have difficult emotions while doing this. Acceptance does not instantly remove sadness. Sometimes you accept something intellectually before your heart fully catches up. That is fine. You can know a relationship is over and still miss the person. You can know a decision cannot be changed and still feel regret. Do not force healing. Let feelings pass through you without creating a permanent identity around them. Say, I feel sadness, instead of, my life is sad. Say, I am experiencing regret, instead of, I am a failure. Language matters because it reminds you that emotions are experiences, not permanent definitions of who you are. Buddhism teaches that everything arising will eventually change. This includes emotions. No feeling remains at exactly the same intensity forever. You already have proof of this in your own life. Think about something that once felt unbearable. Maybe you believed you would never recover, yet somehow the days continued. The pain changed. You changed. This difficult chapter can change too, but you must allow it to become a chapter, instead of making it the entire story. There is a strange comfort in familiar pain. Sometimes people keep returning to it because they know how to live there. A new future requires uncertainty. It requires making choices without knowing exactly how everything will turn out. The past may have hurt you, but at least it is known. The future is unknown, and that can feel frightening. Yet every better life begins by stepping into something you cannot fully predict. You cannot know every person you will meet. You cannot know every opportunity that will appear. You cannot know exactly how long healing will take. You only know that staying emotionally inside what has already ended will keep you from discovering what could happen next. At some point, you must trust life enough to keep walking, not because you know everything will be perfect, but because you know you are capable of meeting what comes. You have already survived days you thought would break you. You have learned from people who disappointed you. You have rebuilt parts of yourself before. Give yourself credit for that. You do not need the past to change in order to become stronger. You need to change your relationship with the past. Instead of saying, "This ruined me," perhaps one day you can say, "This changed me, and I decided what that change would become." Instead of saying, "They took everything from me," you may eventually say, "I lost something important, but I did not lose my ability to rebuild." This does not happen overnight. It happens through repeated decisions to return to your life. You wake up and choose not to check the old messages. You notice the memory and return to your work. You feel the sadness and still take care of your body. You think about what could have been and then remind yourself to look at what can still be. These small choices slowly weaken the grip of the past. Eventually, you notice that you are no longer waiting for a different ending. You have accepted the one that happened. And something surprising follows that acceptance. You become free to create a new beginning. This is the part many people miss. An ending does not only take something away, it also creates space. If one path closed, there is now space to choose another. If someone left, there is now space to understand yourself differently. If a plan failed, there is now space to build with more wisdom than before. Empty space can feel frightening until you realize it is also possibility. Do not immediately fill that space with another version of the same pattern. Take time to understand what the old chapter was trying to teach you. Maybe it taught you to speak sooner. Maybe it taught you to stop ignoring red flags. Maybe it taught you that love without respect is not enough. Maybe it taught you that you need stronger boundaries. Maybe it taught you that waiting forever for someone to change can become a way of abandoning yourself. Use the lesson. Otherwise, you may let go of the person while keeping the pattern. True moving forward means the old pain changes how wisely you choose, not how fearfully you live. You become more aware, but not bitter, more careful, but not completely closed, more compassionate, but not easily manipulated. That is growth. One day, you may look back at the very thing you once begged to be different and realize that you no longer want a different ending. Not because the ending became good, but because you finally understand how much it taught you. You may realize that if certain people had stayed, you would have continued becoming smaller. If one plan had worked, you might never have discovered another direction. If you had never experienced that pain, you might never have learned how much you were capable of surviving. You do not need to romanticize suffering. Pain is still pain, but you can allow something meaningful to grow from it. This is one of the most powerful ways to let go. You stop asking, "Why did this happen?" every day and begin asking, "What will I do because it happened?" That question gives your power back. Maybe because it happened, you will become more careful about who you trust. Maybe you will finally respect your own limits. Maybe you will stop wasting years waiting for people to become what they promised. Maybe you will become more present with the people who genuinely care about you. The past cannot be edited, but its influence on your future can. That part is still yours. So when your mind returns to an old moment and starts creating a different ending again, gently remind yourself that the story is finished. You do not need to keep rewriting it. Take the lesson from the chapter and close the book for today. Return to your breath. Return to your work. Return to the people who are actually present. Return to your body, your goals, your responsibilities, and the life that still needs you. There is nothing waiting for you inside endless regret, except more regret. But there is an entire future waiting outside it. You may not be able to see exactly what that future looks like yet. That is okay. You do not need the entire map. You only need the next step. Maybe the next step is forgiveness. Maybe it is distance. Maybe it is accepting an apology you never received. Maybe it is forgiving yourself. Maybe it is simply waking tomorrow and deciding not to spend another entire day mentally standing in yesterday. Whatever it is, take it. Life moves in one direction. You can remember what is behind you, but you cannot live there forever without losing what is in front of you. Let the past become wisdom. Let the loss become maturity. Let the mistake become better judgment. Let the disappointment become stronger boundaries. And let the ending remain an ending. You do not need to hate yesterday in order to choose tomorrow. You only need to stop asking yesterday to become something it can never become. When you finally do that, you stop waiting for the past to release you and realize that the final act of release was always yours. 8. Forgive without giving the same pain. Another chance. Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood ideas in healing. Many people believe that forgiving someone means allowing them back into their life, trusting them again, forgetting what happened, or pretending their actions were acceptable. Because of this, they hold on to anger for years because they are afraid that forgiveness will make them weak. But Buddhism teaches something very different. Forgiveness is not about giving another person permission to hurt you again. Forgiveness is about refusing to carry their actions inside your mind forever. When someone hurts you deeply, the event may end, but the emotional reaction can continue for months or even years. You replay what they did, imagine what you should have said, and sometimes build entire conversations in your mind where you finally make them understand your pain. The person may no longer be standing in front of you, yet they still occupy a large part of your attention. In this way, the original pain becomes only the beginning. Afterward, resentment continues, creating new suffering long after the actual event has passed. Buddhism teaches us to observe this carefully. Anger often feels like protection because it tells you, if I stay angry, I will never allow this to happen again. But wisdom can protect you without requiring you to remain angry. You can remember exactly what happened. You can learn from it. You can create stronger boundaries. You can decide that someone no longer belongs close to you. None of these things require hatred. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting the lesson. In fact, healthy forgiveness should make you wiser. If someone lied repeatedly, forgiving them does not require you to pretend they suddenly became trustworthy. If someone constantly disrespected your boundaries, forgiveness does not require you to remove those boundaries. If someone abandoned you every time life became difficult, forgiveness does not mean you must depend on them again. You can release anger while still remembering the pattern. This is important because many people confuse kindness with unlimited access. They believe that if they are compassionate, they must continue giving another person chances. Buddhism teaches compassion, but compassion without wisdom can become self-neglect. You can understand why someone behaves the way they do without allowing that behavior to continue hurting you. Maybe someone had a difficult childhood. Maybe they were carrying their own emotional wounds. Maybe they were afraid, immature, insecure, or confused. Understanding these things can help you release some anger, but understanding someone's pain does not make you responsible for accepting the pain they create. Two truths can exist at the same time. You can recognize that someone is struggling, and you can recognize that you cannot remain close to them. Sometimes distance is the most compassionate decision you can make for yourself. You may wish them healing. You may genuinely hope they become a better person. You may stop wanting revenge, but you can still decide that their journey toward becoming better will happen without you standing beside them. There is nothing cruel about protecting the peace you worked hard to rebuild. Think about a person who has been bitten by the same dog several times. Forgiveness might mean they stop spending every day hating the dog. But forgiveness does not mean they need to put their hand near its mouth again. Learning is not hatred. Protecting yourself is not revenge. This same wisdom should be applied to relationships. If someone has shown you repeatedly that they cannot respect your trust, you are allowed to change their level of access to your life. Maybe you forgive them but no longer share private information with them. Maybe you forgive them but stop depending on their promises. Maybe you forgive them but keep your distance. Sometimes forgiveness changes your heart without changing the relationship. This is especially important when someone apologizes. An apology can be meaningful, but words alone do not automatically repair trust. Trust is rebuilt through consistent behavior. Someone can say, "I am sorry," and still continue doing the same thing. If their behavior never changes, you do not have to keep reopening the door simply because they know how to apologize. Buddhism teaches us to pay attention to reality rather than becoming attached to what we hope someone will become. This means observing actions clearly. If a person promises change, allow time to reveal whether that change is real. Do not let hope erase everything experience has already taught you. Some people are very convincing when they are afraid of losing access to you. They may suddenly become kind, attentive, and apologetic. You may think, maybe this time they finally understand. Sometimes people truly do change, but real change is not usually proven by a few emotional words. It is shown through consistent behavior when the immediate fear of losing you has passed. You do not need to rush your trust. Forgiveness can happen faster than reconciliation. You may release your anger today while taking months or years to decide whether someone belongs close to you again. There is no rule saying that because you forgive, everything must return to how it was. Sometimes, everything should not return to how it was. Perhaps the old relationship only worked because you tolerated things you no longer tolerate. Maybe it survived because you remained quiet whenever you were hurt. Maybe you kept forgiving without requiring change. If healing has made you stronger, the old relationship may no longer fit the person you have become. This is not a failure of forgiveness. It may actually be proof of growth. Buddhism also reminds us that holding hatred can quietly change us. When someone hurts you, you may begin carrying their behavior into every new relationship. You become suspicious before anyone has done anything wrong. You assume people will leave. You expect betrayal. You stop trusting your own ability to judge character. In this way, one person's actions begin affecting people who had nothing to do with what happened. Healing means refusing to let the person who hurt you determine how you treat everyone who comes afterward. This does not mean becoming careless. Wisdom and trust are different things. You can move slowly with new people. You can pay attention to patterns. You can protect yourself while still remaining open to the possibility that not everyone will repeat your past. If one person lied to you, learn to recognize dishonesty, but do not convince yourself that everyone is a liar. If someone betrayed you, become wiser about trust, but do not make every new person pay for someone else's behavior. Otherwise, the person from your past continues influencing your future relationships without even being present. This is why forgiveness is ultimately something you do for yourself. You are not saying, "What happened was okay." You are saying, "What happened will not control everything that happens next." There is enormous freedom in that decision. You stop waking up angry at someone who may not even be thinking about you. You stop rehearsing arguments they may never hear. You stop imagining revenge because you realize that your peace is more valuable than watching another person suffer. Revenge often looks powerful in imagination. You think that if they experience the pain they gave you, something inside you will finally feel satisfied. But even if they suffer, your original wound still needs healing. Their pain does not automatically become your peace. This is why Buddhism does not teach revenge as the solution to suffering. Anger answered with more anger continues the cycle. Someone hurts you, so you hurt them. They respond, and the conflict grows. Even if the relationship ends, the bitterness can remain. Someone must eventually stop feeding the fire. Sometimes that person is you. You decide that enough pain has already been created. You will not add more simply because you have the ability to do so. This is not weakness. It takes more inner strength to walk away peacefully than to continue fighting every battle your ego wants to win. The ego wants the last word. It wants the other person to admit defeat. It wants everyone to know who was right and who was wrong. But peace often arrives when you become less interested in winning the story and more interested in leaving the story. There are situations where you may never be understood. Someone may tell a completely different version of what happened. They may make themselves look innocent and make you look like the problem. Your first instinct may be to explain yourself to everyone. Sometimes explaining is necessary, especially when something serious affects your life or reputation. But not every misunderstanding deserves endless energy. Some people have already decided what they want to believe. If you spend your life trying to correct every person's opinion of you, you become trapped inside other people's minds. Buddhist wisdom reminds us to return attention to our own conduct. Ask yourself whether you are living according to your values now. Are you becoming more honest, patient, compassionate, and aware? If so, allow your actions over time to speak for you. You cannot control every story told about you. You can control the person you continue becoming. Forgiveness is also important when the person you need to forgive is yourself. Sometimes we are far more patient with others than with our own mistakes. You may understand why someone else acted poorly, but when you remember your own past behavior, you attack yourself without mercy. You think about an opportunity you wasted, a relationship you damaged, or a decision you wish you could reverse. Years may have passed, yet you continue sentencing yourself for something the younger version of you did. Ask yourself what purpose this punishment is serving. If you have learned from the mistake, changed your behavior, apologized where appropriate, and made better choices, then endless guilt is no longer teaching you anything. It is simply keeping you emotionally connected to the person you used to be. Buddhism teaches that the self is not fixed. You are constantly changing. The person who made that mistake is connected to you, but you are not required to remain exactly like them forever. Every wiser decision you make today is evidence that growth happened. Self-forgiveness does not mean avoiding responsibility. If you hurt someone, acknowledge it. If you can repair something, repair it. If an apology is appropriate, give it sincerely, without demanding forgiveness in return. Then make sure your future behavior reflects what you learned. That is how guilt becomes wisdom. But if you keep saying, "I am terrible because I made a terrible decision," you confuse an action with an identity. There is an important difference between saying, "I did something wrong," and saying, "I am permanently wrong." One gives you room to improve, the other traps you. You are allowed to become more mature than your worst decision. Sometimes self-forgiveness is harder because you know exactly what you were thinking when you made the mistake. You cannot hide from your own memory, but remember that people often make poor decisions from fear, loneliness, anger, insecurity, or lack of understanding. Understand the cause, learn from it, and change the conditions that allowed it to happen. If loneliness caused you to stay with the wrong people, learn how to become comfortable alone. If fear made you lie, practice honesty even when it is uncomfortable. If insecurity made you seek approval, strengthen your relationship with yourself. This is how real forgiveness works. It transforms the lesson into behavior. Another part of forgiveness is accepting that you may never receive an apology from certain people. This can be difficult because you know what they did, and part of you wants acknowledgement. You want them to say, "Yes, I hurt you. You did not deserve that." Maybe hearing those words would feel meaningful, but if you make your healing depend on hearing them, you may wait forever. Some people cannot apologize because admitting what they did would challenge the story they tell themselves. Others know what they did, but do not have the emotional maturity to face it. Some may apologize years later, some never will. Your life cannot remain frozen until they become ready. You may need to create an ending without their participation. Tell yourself, I know what happened. I know what it taught me. I do not need them to confirm my experience before I move forward. That is powerful. There is another reason forgiveness takes time. Anger often hides deeper feelings. Beneath anger may be sadness, disappointment, embarrassment, rejection, or grief. Sometimes staying angry feels safer than admitting that something broke your heart. Anger makes you feel strong. Sadness can make you feel vulnerable. But healing requires allowing yourself to feel what is actually there. Maybe you were not only angry that someone left, you were hurt because you believed they would always stay. Maybe you were not only angry about the lie, you were grieving the trust you thought you had. Maybe you were not only angry about being rejected, you were afraid it meant you were not enough. When you understand the deeper emotion, forgiveness becomes easier because you stop fighting only the surface. Sit with what you feel. You do not need to judge it. Buddhism teaches mindfulness partly because clear observation reduces the power emotions have over us. You can say, I am angry right now, and notice where that anger appears in your body. You can notice the thoughts connected to it without immediately acting. The emotion becomes something you are experiencing instead of something controlling you. With practice, feelings move. They rise, remain for a while, and eventually weaken. This does not mean you will never remember what happened again. Certain wounds leave lessons for life. But there is a major difference between remembering something and continuing to live emotionally inside it. Forgiveness means the memory becomes lighter. You can think about what happened without needing revenge. You can hear the person's name without losing your entire day. You can recognize the lesson without reopening the wound every time. This is progress. Do not demand instant forgiveness from yourself either. Sometimes people hear spiritual teachings and begin feeling guilty because they are still angry. They say, I should have forgiven them by now. But forcing forgiveness before you understand your pain can become another form of denial. Take your time. Forgiveness is often a process rather than a single decision. Today you may release some anger, and tomorrow another layer appears. That does not mean you failed. It means healing has depth. Each time the memory returns, you can choose again not to feed resentment. Eventually, the choice becomes easier. At some point, you may even begin to see that forgiveness does not require a strong emotional feeling at all. You may never feel warmth toward the person. You may never want them in your life. You simply reach a place where you no longer want to spend your energy hating them. That is enough. Peace does not always look like reunion. Sometimes peace looks like distance without anger. You can walk past someone mentally and say, I hope you find whatever healing you need, but I am no longer available for what you brought into my life. There is strength in that sentence because it combines compassion with boundaries. You wish them well, but you also wish yourself well. Many people know how to show compassion outwardly, but forget that they are also deserving of it. They constantly make excuses for everyone else while demanding themselves to tolerate more pain. Buddhism teaches compassion for all beings. You are included in that. Protecting yourself does not make you less spiritual. Choosing distance from repeated harm does not make you cruel. Refusing to return to a destructive situation does not mean your heart is full of hatred. Sometimes, leaving is what wisdom looks like. Imagine holding a hot piece of metal because someone else gave it to you. You are angry at them for burning you, but as long as you continue holding it, your hand keeps burning. Forgiveness is putting the metal down. You can remember who handed it to you. You can decide never to accept the same thing again. But you do not have to keep holding it to prove that what they did was wrong. Your suffering is not evidence in a courtroom. You do not need to remain hurt forever so that the seriousness of what happened remains valid. You are allowed to heal. You are allowed to become happy again. Sometimes people feel guilty when they begin feeling better. They think that if they stop being angry, the person somehow got away with it. But your continued suffering does not punish them in the way you imagine. Most of the time, resentment lives mainly inside the person carrying it. Your happiness is not permission for what happened. Your healing is not approval of their behavior. It is simply the end of their ability to keep affecting your inner world. This is one of the greatest freedoms you can give yourself. As you heal, you may begin noticing that you no longer think about justice in the same way. Instead of asking, "When will life punish them?" you begin asking, "How can I make sure I never abandon myself like that again?" Your attention shifts from their future to your future. That is a sign that you are moving forward. You become less interested in whether they changed and more interested in whether you changed. Did you learn stronger boundaries? Did you become more aware? Did you stop ignoring patterns? Did you learn to trust actions more than promises? If the answer is yes, then the pain gave you something valuable. You paid for that lesson through experience. Do not throw the lesson away by returning to the same pattern. This is another reason forgiveness must be combined with wisdom. If you forgive repeatedly without learning, you may confuse spiritual kindness with self-abandonment. Forgive, but observe. Forgive, but remember the pattern. Forgive, but let trust be earned. Forgive, but do not keep volunteering for the same lesson. Some people belong in your memories rather than your future. There is nothing wrong with that. You can appreciate something good they once brought into your life, while recognizing that the relationship later became unhealthy. People are complicated. Someone can have given you beautiful memories and still become someone you need distance from. You do not need to rewrite them as completely evil in order to leave. This is an important form of emotional maturity. You can say, "There were good moments, but the relationship is no longer good for me." You can acknowledge love without using love as an excuse to tolerate harm. You can miss what was good without returning to everything that came with it. Sometimes the heart remembers only the beautiful parts when loneliness appears. That is why wisdom must remember the entire story. If you ever feel tempted to reopen a door that repeatedly hurt you, do not remember only the apology, the good days, or the promises. Remember the pattern. Remember how often you had to recover. Remember the anxiety, confusion, and exhaustion. This does not mean living bitterly. It means making decisions from complete information rather than selective memory. Your mind may say, "Maybe it would be different now. Maybe it would." But ask yourself whether there is real evidence of change or simply your desire for the story to end differently. Hope is beautiful, but hope without reality can keep you trapped for years. Buddhism teaches clear seeing. See people as they are, not only as you wish they would become. If change is real, it will eventually become visible through behavior. You do not need to chase it. You do not need to wait for it. Continue living your life. If someone truly grows, that is their journey. Your journey is to become peaceful, whether they change or not. This is where forgiveness becomes complete. You stop needing the person to suffer, but you also stop needing them to become better for your sake. Their life becomes their responsibility again. Your life becomes yours. You no longer check whether karma has reached them. You no longer watch from a distance hoping their next relationship fails. You no longer secretly celebrate when something goes wrong for them. Instead, you realize that every minute spent watching their life is another minute not spent living yours. Let them carry their own choices. You carry your wisdom. Life becomes lighter when you stop trying to manage the consequences other people should receive. There is an old Buddhist idea that anger is like carrying something harmful with the intention of eventually giving it to another person. The problem is that you are the one carrying it the entire time. Put it down. Not because the person deserves your forgiveness, because you deserve freedom from the burden. This difference matters. Forgiveness is not a reward you give someone for good behavior. It is a decision about what you are willing to continue carrying. Perhaps one day they apologize, perhaps they never do. Perhaps they change completely. Perhaps they remain exactly the same. Your peace should not depend on any of those outcomes. You can close the chapter from your side, and when you do, something inside you becomes available again. The energy that was used for resentment can become energy for your goals. The mental space occupied by arguments can become space for creativity. The time spent remembering what someone did can become time spent building who you want to become. This is what healing gives back to you. It gives you yourself. So forgive slowly if you need to. Forgive from a distance if necessary. Forgive without sending a message. Forgive without reopening the relationship. Forgive while keeping the lesson clearly in your mind. And most importantly, forgive yourself for the times you stayed too long, trusted too deeply, ignored your intuition, or believed promises that were never fulfilled. You were learning. Now live according to what you learned. The goal is not to become someone who can never be hurt again. That would require closing your heart completely. The goal is to become someone who knows how to respond wisely when hurt happens. You feel the pain, understand the lesson, protect yourself, heal, and continue. You do not build a permanent home inside resentment. You do not allow one person's actions to determine your entire personality. You do not become cruel because someone was cruel to you. This is one of the strongest forms of victory. You leave the experience wiser without allowing it to make you bitter. You keep your compassion but strengthen your boundaries. You keep your ability to love but become more careful about where you place your trust. You remember what happened without allowing the memory to control every new relationship. And eventually, when you think about the person who hurt you, you may feel something you once thought was impossible. Not love, not hatred. Simply peace. They become someone who was part of your journey rather than someone who still controls the direction of it. That is when forgiveness has done its work. You did not erase the past, you changed its place in your life. It moved from the center of your mind into the library of things that taught you. And from that point forward, you no longer need to carry anger to prove you learned the lesson. Your wisdom is proof enough. 9. Stop expecting healing to mean you never hurt again. Many people misunderstand healing because they expect it to look like complete emotional silence. They believe that once they have truly moved on, they should never feel sad again, never miss the person again, never think about what happened, and never feel pain when an old memory returns. Then one difficult day comes, something reminds them of the past, and suddenly they think all their progress has disappeared. Buddhism teaches a gentler and more realistic understanding of healing. Healing does not mean you never hurt again. It means pain no longer controls the direction of your life. There may be days when you feel completely peaceful, and other days when one memory suddenly makes your heart heavy. This does not mean you are back at the beginning. It simply means you are human. Emotions move in waves. Some memories become quiet for weeks and then return unexpectedly. A song, a place, a date, a familiar smell, or even a certain kind of weather can bring back something you thought you had already released. The mistake is believing that the return of emotion means the return of the old life. A memory is not a command to go backward. You can remember someone and still know they no longer belong in your life. You can feel sadness and still know you made the right decision. You can miss the good moments without wanting the painful relationship back. These feelings can exist together. Healing becomes much easier when you stop demanding that your emotions be perfectly simple. Sometimes you may think, if I still miss them, maybe I should go back. But missing someone only means they once mattered to you. It does not automatically mean the relationship was healthy. The heart can miss familiarity even when the mind remembers the pain. This is why wisdom must guide emotion. Buddhism teaches mindfulness, which means observing what is happening inside you without immediately reacting to it. When sadness appears, instead of saying, "Something is wrong with me," you can simply notice, "Sadness is here today." When an old memory returns, instead of saying, "I will never heal," you can notice, "My mind is remembering something painful." This small change in language matters because it creates space between you and the emotion. You are not the sadness. You are experiencing sadness. You are not your grief. You are experiencing grief. You are not your fear. Fear is something moving through you. When you understand this, emotions become less frightening. You stop treating every uncomfortable feeling like a permanent condition. You begin to understand that feelings rise, stay for a while, and eventually change. Buddhism often points to impermanence because everything in life changes. Your emotions are included in that truth. Think about the strongest sadness you have ever felt. At the time, it may have seemed endless. Maybe you could not imagine laughing again. Maybe you believed you would think about the situation every day forever. But eventually something changed. Perhaps the pain became softer. Perhaps your attention moved elsewhere. Perhaps life slowly gave you new experiences. This is proof that even powerful emotions are not permanent. The problem is that when pain returns, the mind often forgets everything it already survived. One difficult evening can make you believe you have made no progress at all. You forget the weeks when you were doing well. You forget how much stronger you have become. You forget the boundaries you learned to protect. Do not judge your entire healing journey by one painful moment. Think about physical recovery. If someone injures their leg, there may be days when walking feels easy and days when the injury feels sore again. That does not automatically mean the healing disappeared. Emotional healing can behave in a similar way. Some days the old wound feels distant. Other days something touches it and reminds you that it existed. The goal is not to erase every trace of what happened. The goal is to become strong enough that the memory no longer decides how you live. Perhaps months ago, thinking about the person ruined your entire day. Now it hurts for 10 minutes. That is healing. Maybe you once checked their social media every hour, but now you only feel the temptation occasionally and choose not to act on it. That is healing. Maybe you once blamed yourself constantly, but now you understand that you did the best you could with what you knew then. That is healing. Progress is often much quieter than people expect. You may not wake up one morning and suddenly announce, "I am completely healed." Instead, you notice small things. You laugh without forcing it. You enjoy a meal without thinking about the past. You make plans for next month. You become interested in something new. You hear the person's name and your body no longer reacts the same way. These are small signs that your life is returning to you. Do not ignore them simply because some sadness still exists. Healing and sadness are not opposites. You can be healing while still grieving. You can be stronger while still having difficult days. You can be moving forward while occasionally looking backward. What matters is where your life is going overall. Imagine walking up a mountain. Sometimes the path turns in a direction that makes it look as if you are moving backward, but you are still gaining height. Healing can feel the same way. There may be moments when you revisit an old emotion, but you are meeting it from a different level of understanding. The sadness that once made you desperate may now simply make you reflective. The memory that once made you contact someone may now remind you why you chose distance. The disappointment that once made you question your worth may now remind you how much you have grown. The emotion may be similar, but you are not the same person experiencing it. This is why healing cannot be measured only by whether pain appears. It should also be measured by how you respond when it appears. Do you still abandon yourself when you feel lonely? Do you still return to people who hurt you because one evening feels difficult? Do you still believe every negative thought your mind produces? Or can you now sit with discomfort without destroying the progress you made? That difference is powerful. Buddhism teaches us not to chase every pleasant feeling and not to run from every unpleasant feeling. Both come and go. When you demand constant happiness, sadness becomes terrifying. When you understand that emotional life naturally changes, you become less afraid of difficult days. You do not have to fix every emotion immediately. Sometimes sadness simply needs to be felt. Sometimes disappointment needs silence. Sometimes grief needs time. Not every feeling is a problem to solve. This can be difficult because modern life often teaches us to escape discomfort quickly. The moment we feel lonely, we reach for our phone. The moment we feel sad, we search for distraction. The moment we miss someone, we consider contacting them. But constantly escaping emotion prevents you from learning an important truth. You can survive feelings without obeying them. Sit with the sadness for a little while. Notice where it appears in your body. Maybe your chest feels heavy. Maybe your thoughts become slower. Maybe you feel the desire to withdraw. Observe it without making a dramatic story around it. Instead of saying, "I feel sad, therefore I made the wrong decision," simply say, "I feel sad because something meaningful ended." There is a big difference. Pain does not always mean you chose incorrectly. Sometimes the right decision still hurts. Walking away from someone you love can hurt. Creating a boundary with family can hurt. Leaving an unhealthy environment can hurt. Accepting that a dream is no longer possible can hurt. Do not confuse pain with proof that you should return. This is especially important when loneliness appears after leaving a difficult relationship. Your mind may begin remembering only the good moments. It may forget the confusion, disrespect, anxiety, or emotional exhaustion. You begin thinking, maybe it was not that bad. Be careful with selective memory. The mind often romanticizes the past when the present feels empty. Remember the whole story. Remember why you had to heal in the first place. You do not need to hate the person or situation. You simply need to remain honest about what happened. Healing requires honesty more than fantasy. Another mistake people make is comparing their healing speed to someone else's. You see someone who experienced a breakup and seems happy within a month, while you are still struggling 6 months later. You begin thinking something is wrong with you. But people do not experience loss in identical ways. The depth of attachment is different. The history is different. The personality is different. The circumstances are different. Some people also hide their pain very well. Do not use someone else's outside appearance to judge your inside experience. Buddhism encourages us to observe our own mind rather than constantly comparing ourselves to others. Your path is your path. The important question is not whether you are healing faster than someone else. The important question is whether you are moving toward greater awareness, peace, and wisdom. Even slow progress is progress. Sometimes healing takes longer because the wound is connected to something deeper. A breakup may awaken an old fear of abandonment. Criticism may awaken childhood insecurity. Betrayal may make you question your ability to trust your own judgment. If this happens, do not become angry with yourself. Perhaps the current pain is showing you something older that also needs attention. This is another way suffering can become a teacher. Instead of asking only, "Why am I still upset about this person?" ask, "What does this pain reveal about what I need to heal within myself?" Maybe you realize you depended too much on another person's approval. Maybe you realize you were afraid to be alone. Maybe you ignored your needs because you believed love required sacrifice. These realizations can be uncomfortable, but they are valuable. You are not simply trying to recover from one event anymore. You are learning how to become emotionally stronger for the rest of your life. This is where Buddhist self-awareness becomes useful. Instead of focusing only on what another person did, you gently examine your own patterns. What made you stay? What signs did you ignore? What fear prevented you from speaking? What belief made you think you had to accept certain behavior? These are not questions meant to blame you. They are questions meant to free you. If you understand the pattern, you are less likely to repeat it. Healing is not only becoming comfortable again, it is becoming wiser. Sometimes the pain returns because you are growing into a new version of yourself, and growth itself can feel uncomfortable. You may no longer fit into your old friendships. Your old routines may feel empty. Things that once entertained you may no longer satisfy you. This can create a strange period where the old life is gone, but the new life is not fully built yet. Do not mistake this uncomfortable middle stage for failure. You are between versions of yourself. The old habits no longer feel right, but the new habits are still becoming natural. You may feel lonely, uncertain, and confused. This is normal during change. Buddhism teaches patience because transformation takes time. A seed does not become a tree because you check it every hour. You water it, protect it, and allow the process to happen. Treat your healing the same way. You do not need to inspect yourself every morning and ask, "Am I healed yet?" Just keep doing the things that support healing. Protect your boundaries. Take care of your body. Spend time with people who bring calm. Create meaningful work. Allow yourself rest. Practice awareness. Little by little, the inner change happens. There may also be moments when life feels good again, and you become afraid to enjoy it. After experiencing pain, some people start expecting another loss. They think, things are going well, so something bad must be coming. This is another way old pain can steal the present. You become so afraid of losing happiness that you cannot fully experience it. Buddhism teaches us that everything is impermanent, but this teaching is not meant to make us afraid of good things. It is meant to help us appreciate them while they are here. Enjoy the good day, enjoy the peaceful conversation, enjoy the person who treats you kindly, enjoy the meal, the walk, the sunrise, the quiet evening. Yes, these moments will change eventually. That is exactly why they deserve your full attention now. Impermanence does not make life meaningless. It makes presence more important. If you spend every happy moment worrying about when it will end, then the fear of future pain becomes another kind of suffering. You have already experienced enough pain. Do not create more by refusing to trust peaceful moments. Let happiness arrive without interrogating it. Another part of healing is learning not to identify yourself forever as the person who was hurt. At first, the painful event may become a major part of your identity. You tell the story repeatedly. You think of yourself as the person who was betrayed, abandoned, rejected, or mistreated. This can be understandable in the beginning because you are trying to make sense of what happened, but eventually you must ask whether the story is helping you heal or keeping you attached to the wound. You are more than what happened to you. You have qualities, dreams, abilities, relationships, and possibilities that existed before the pain and can continue after it. Do not allow one chapter to become your entire identity. Maybe you were betrayed, but you are not only someone who was betrayed. Maybe you failed, but you are not only someone who failed. Maybe someone left you, but you are not simply the person who was left. You are still becoming. Buddhism teaches that the self is constantly changing. This is good news because it means you do not have to remain emotionally frozen in the identity you had during your worst period. You can build new evidence about who you are. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen self-trust. Every time you say no to something unhealthy, you become someone with stronger boundaries. Every time you choose peace over drama, you become more emotionally stable. Every time you continue after disappointment, you become someone who knows how to recover. Over time, these new experiences become stronger than the old story. You also need to understand that forgiveness and healing do not always happen at the same speed. You may intellectually forgive someone while your emotions still react to what happened. Or you may emotionally feel better while still trying to understand what you learned. Give the process space. There is no requirement that everything inside you becomes peaceful at the same moment. Some wounds heal in layers. First, you stop contacting the person. Then you stop checking on them. Then you stop imagining their return. Then you stop needing an apology. Then one day, you realize you no longer care whether they understand your side. Each layer is progress. Do not disrespect small stages simply because you have not reached the final one. There is also a difference between healing and becoming numb. Sometimes people say, "I do not care anymore." But what they really mean is, "I refuse to feel anything because feeling became dangerous." Numbness may protect you temporarily, but it is not the same as peace. True peace allows you to feel without being destroyed by feeling. You can care and still have boundaries. You can love and still walk away. You can trust again while being wiser. You do not need to become cold to prove you became strong. Buddhist compassion is not weakness. A healed heart can remain soft without remaining unprotected. You can be kind without becoming easy to manipulate. You can understand someone without excusing their behavior. You can forgive without returning. This balance is one of the greatest signs of emotional maturity. Healing should make you clearer, not harder. It should help you understand what deserves your energy and what does not. Another important sign of healing is when you stop requiring everyone to understand what you went through. At the beginning, you may desperately want people to validate your experience. You want someone to say, "Yes, you were treated unfairly." That validation can be comforting, but eventually your own understanding must become enough. You know what happened, you know how it affected you, you know what you learned. You do not need every person around you to agree with your interpretation before you are allowed to move forward. Sometimes, people will misunderstand your boundaries. Someone may think you are cold because you created distance. Someone may think you are unforgiving because you did not return. Someone may say you changed. Maybe you did. Healing often changes people. You may become quieter about what you share. You may become more selective with your time. You may stop explaining yourself constantly. You may stop tolerating behavior you once accepted. This is not automatically bitterness. Sometimes it is wisdom. Do not shrink your growth because someone was more comfortable with the version of you who had weaker boundaries. The purpose of healing is not to become easy for everyone else to deal with. It is to become more peaceful and honest within yourself. As you heal, you may also notice that your standards change. What once felt normal may begin feeling unacceptable. You recognize manipulation faster. You notice disrespect sooner. You become uncomfortable with constant chaos. This is a good sign. Sometimes people worry that they have become too sensitive after healing, when in reality they have become more aware. Your nervous system remembers what certain patterns cost you. Use that awareness wisely. Do not become paranoid, but do not ignore what you have learned either. There is a middle path. Buddhism often teaches a middle way between extremes. You do not need to trust everyone blindly, and you do not need to trust no one. You do not need to forgive everything instantly, and you do not need to carry resentment forever. You do not need to avoid all attachment, and you do not need to make another person the center of your entire life. Balance is the goal. Healing brings you closer to that balance. One day, you may notice that the past feels different. You still remember what happened, but the story no longer has the same emotional weight. You may even speak about it calmly. You no longer need to convince anyone. You no longer feel the urge to prove who was wrong. You simply understand that it was a chapter that changed you. This is one of the quietest signs of freedom. The memory still exists, but it no longer owns you. That is why you should not measure healing by asking, "Do I ever feel pain?" Ask instead, "Does this pain still run my life? Does it choose who you trust? Does it decide whether you take new opportunities? Does it keep you from enjoying good moments?" Does it force you back into relationships you already know are unhealthy? If the answer is becoming no, then you are healing, even if some sadness remains. Sometimes there will always be a tender place inside you, connected to certain experiences. That tenderness does not make you weak. It may simply mean you loved deeply, hoped sincerely, or went through something that mattered. You do not have to destroy that part of yourself. Let it become softer. Let it become wisdom. Let it remind you to treat yourself and others with greater care. The goal is not to become someone who cannot be touched by life. The goal is to become someone who can be touched without being completely destroyed. That is a much stronger form of peace. You begin to trust your ability to recover. This changes everything. Before healing, you may avoid love because you fear heartbreak. You may avoid opportunities because you fear failure. You may avoid change because you fear loss. But when you trust your ability to recover, fear becomes smaller. You understand that even if something ends, you will still be there. Even if someone leaves, you can rebuild. Even if a plan fails, you can create another. This does not make you careless, it makes you courageous. Your confidence is no longer based on believing nothing bad will happen. It comes from knowing that if something difficult happens, you can meet it with more wisdom than before. This is one of the greatest gifts healing can give you. You stop trying to control life perfectly and begin trusting yourself more deeply. Buddhist teaching does not promise a life without suffering. It teaches a different relationship with suffering. Pain comes, but you do not build your identity around it. Loss comes, but you understand that life can continue. Change comes, and instead of spending forever fighting it, you learn how to move with it. That is freedom. So the next time an old feeling returns, do not immediately judge yourself. Do not say, "I thought I was over this." Instead, become curious. Ask what the feeling needs. Maybe it needs rest. Maybe it needs a quiet evening. Maybe it needs you to remember why you walked away. Maybe it simply needs a few minutes to pass. Give yourself that space. Then continue. Return to the life you are building. Healing is not proved by never looking backward. It is proved by knowing how to return forward. You may remember. You may miss. You may occasionally feel the old pain. But you no longer make permanent decisions from temporary emotions. You no longer destroy today's peace because yesterday visited your mind for a moment. You allow the feeling to come, you listen to what it can teach you, and then you allow it to leave. That is what moving forward looks like in real life. Not forgetting everything, not becoming emotionless, not pretending the past never mattered. It is becoming strong enough to carry the memory without allowing the memory to carry you. And eventually, you realize something important. Healing was never about becoming the person you were before the pain. It was about becoming someone wiser after it, someone who understands impermanence, someone who knows how to let emotions pass, someone who can love without abandoning themselves, someone who can lose and still rebuild, someone who can remember and still move forward. That is real healing, not the absence of pain, but the return of your freedom. Letting go does not mean that what happened was unimportant. It does not mean that the people you loved never mattered, that the pain was not real, or that you should forget every difficult experience. Letting go simply means you stop allowing the past to control the life you still have in front of you. You accept that some chapters ended without the explanation you wanted. Some people changed. Some promises were broken. And some things can never return to the way they once were. Buddhism teaches us that everything changes. People change, emotions change, relationships change, and even the strongest pain eventually changes. When you understand this deeply, you stop trying to hold on to things that life is already asking you to release. You stop believing that peace will come only when someone apologizes, returns, understands you, or finally admits what they did wrong. You begin to understand that peace can start inside you, even when nothing outside of you changes. Healing is not about waking up one morning and suddenly forgetting everything. It happens slowly. It happens when you stop checking on people who no longer belong in your life. When you forgive yourself for the choices you made before you knew better. When you create stronger boundaries, and when you begin using your energy to build something new instead of constantly remembering what was lost. Every small decision to choose your peace is part of healing. There will still be difficult days. Old memories may return. You may suddenly miss someone you thought you had completely released. You may remember an old mistake and feel regret again. Do not use these moments as proof that you are failing. Healing does not mean the past never enters your mind. It means the past no longer decides what you do next. You can remember without returning. You can forgive without allowing the same pain back into your life. You can miss someone and still know that distance is healthier. You can regret something and still forgive the person you were when you made that decision. These are not contradictions. They are signs that you are becoming wiser. Do not spend another year waiting for your old life to return. The person you are becoming may need a completely different life. Maybe you need quieter mornings, healthier relationships, stronger boundaries, more meaningful work, and fewer people who constantly disturb your peace. Maybe losing what you once wanted is creating space for something that fits you better now. Your responsibility is not to make yesterday perfect. Your responsibility is to use today wisely. Take care of your mind. Take care of your body. Protect your energy. Choose people who treat you with respect. Give your attention to things that help you grow. Build routines that make your life calmer and give yourself something meaningful to move toward. One day, you may look back at the chapter that once felt impossible to survive and realize that it no longer has the same power over you. You will remember what happened, but you will not feel the need to return. You will understand that the ending was painful, but it also pushed you toward lessons you might never have learned otherwise. That is when you will realize that letting go was never about losing everything. It was about making room. Room for peace. Room for wisdom. Room for better relationships. Room for new experiences. Room for a stronger version of yourself. So stop asking the past to become different. Stop waiting for people to give you the closure they may never give. Stop punishing yourself for what you did not understand at the time. Take the lesson, keep the wisdom, and release the weight. You still have life in front of you. You still have mornings you have not seen, people you have not met, places you have not visited, opportunities you have not discovered, and versions of yourself you have not yet become. Do not sacrifice all of that because one chapter did not end the way you wanted. Let what is finished remain finished. Let what is gone remain behind you. And give yourself permission to become excited about your future again. You do not need to carry everything forward with you. Carry the wisdom, carry the strength, carry the lessons, but leave the unnecessary suffering behind. Your past may always be part of your story, but it does not have to be the place where your story ends. Keep walking, keep healing, and keep building a life that feels more peaceful, more meaningful, and more like your own. Let go of what you cannot change. Make peace with what has already happened. Trust that difficult feelings will pass, and remember that every day you choose to move forward, the past loses a little more control over you. Your better life does not begin when the past finally changes. It begins when you stop waiting for it to change and decide to live again.